This pro quarterback learned football on YouTube, never played in high school. Now he's 30, still chasing the NFL.
You don't grow up wanting to be, the king of spring, right? You want to be the king of the fall.
I love my conversation with Luis Perez, and it's kind of funny because I was a five-star guy. In fact, we're the same age. I was the top guy, didn't live up to expectations, and I hung up the cleats at 24. And then this other guy, Luis Perez, zero-star recruit, learned from YouTube, is still playing pro quarterback at 30. Let's find out how Luis became the most unlikely pro quarterback in America. Before he ever played a real snap of football, Perez literally watched YouTube videos and would practice five-step drops in his bedroom mirror. He taught himself coverages, watched footwork tutorials, all on YouTube, and then walked into a JUCO coach's office and said he'd be the starter. Every article or video you see about Luis talks about those things. I wanted to hear from him how using YouTube compared to actual live reps.
You can learn the basics. Footwork, five-step drop. You're throwing a six-step out, five in a plant, right? Five in a hitch, throwing a curl, whatever the case may be. You can learn all those things, but one thing is actually doing them. Like you said, like you got to go out there and actually have reps at it. But it does help when you have the foundation already, when you're not having to learn the five in a hitch already, because you already know what you're doing. It's just doing the action of it, which is actually taking the drop physically and throwing the ball.
Perez played JUCO and D2 ball. He didn't come from a Power 5 program. I asked him if there was one moment he realized he could play professionally.
It started my first ever tryout in the NFL, right? When you're not really exposed to Division I players or NFL players, you don't really know what that looks like, right? You have an image in your brain of what you think it looks like, but you don't really know until you stand next to somebody and you throw with them. So for me, I remember I had my first really professional workout was with the Rams, and it's myself, it's Mike Bergovici, there's these other guys that were all there that were all Division I guys. So again, I'm going in there and I don't know how these guys are gonna look, right? I just have this image of wow, like Division I is this big deal. So when I went in there and they were good players, but I fit right in. I almost anticipated that I was gonna be like lower than them because I was at Division II school. But that wasn't necessarily the case. So when I got that moment and I was throwing next to those guys and the Rams ended up signing me over all those guys, that was really the moment that I was like, man, okay, I can really do this. I can really play.
The biggest adjustment period for me was my true freshman year in college. I remember I was asked to throw a snap route on the outside to Marquise Lee, like, 5 no hitch ball out kind of thing. And that was a route, and I never obviously threw to a guy like Marquise Lee before, but that was a route that had never thrown before. And it was like, yo, this is a huge adjustment. I was not ready for that and had to grow into that route and that concept. You obviously having the limited high school experience and having to play catch up and not having all the reps to fall back on and whatnot. What was throughout your career, what's been the moment that's been the steepest adjustment or, largest learning curve for you?
Yeah, to me, that's a great question. So to me, it was never anything physical. It was the mental aspect of it. Right, like going from a college that it was doubles 98. That's the whole play call. That's the protection. That's the concept. That's it, right? To Y short, to south right clamp, pass 18 Wanda, Y bend, lick, X strike, Z bench, can it with, 14, whatever, run play. It's like, whoa, like that was the biggest adjustment, was memorizing, understanding what everybody's doing, being able to get the play, recall it, spit it back out, to Andrew Whitworth. And, when you guys are all looking at me like, what's the play? Right? That was a whole different moment for me that took some time to adjust.
Most quarterbacks in spring leagues are in their early 20s. Perez is 30, married and a father. I asked if the NFL was still the goal or has his mindset shifted and he's settled into being a professional spring quarterback.
I want to go to the NFL. I'm using this as a bridge to go to the NFL. I love being here. I'm very grateful for my time here, but this is not my goal, right? Like my goal is not to be a spring king quarterback, right? Like I want to be in the fall. I want to go and I want to compete and I want to play at the highest of highest levels, which is the NFL. Why am I going to stop when I'm I quote unquote right at the finish line? I just touched the NFL this last year with the Chargers. I was there. Unfortunately, I didn't stick, but it's kind of one of those things where why not keep going if you're right there? Your life can change in a matter of seconds. Right place, right time, right opportunity, right play you make, and now your whole life's changed.
The dude's been close enough to truly believe it's possible. So what sets him apart? He doesn't keep getting all these opportunities, and they don't call him the spring king for nothing. I asked him if being 30 is an advantage or disadvantage when he's talking to these NFL teams.
It's kind of one of those things where it's all perspective, right? So like one coach may see me as, hey, this guy's 30 years old. I don't know. We can get somebody that's 23 out of college and we can groom him how we want him, right? And then it's the other side of it, which is like, man, he's 30 years old, but he didn't play football in high school. So that's 4 years. So he's really 26, right? 30-year-old is really your peak prime, right? In a sense, if you really think about it for a quarterback, that 28 to 32 range is like your peak, in my opinion. You have that. And he's gotten actual live reps in games, right? Different than practice squad where you get stuck behind, all these guys and you don't really get to play real live games. Like you can't simulate a rush and throw, like quarterbacks don't get hit in practice. Like, they don't get hit. You can't simulate a rush, stepping up in the pocket movement, getting out. Like those are things that you can't really emulate as much as you were in the game. So that's one thing I have too, leading men, right? Like taking ownership of a locker room. Like if something happens to your starter, you got to know how to do those things too. How to manage emotion, how to communicate with one another, right? One guy, you might have to rip his ass and be like, hey, that's not how we're doing things. One guy you might have to pull to the side because you know how he is and you can't really talk to him in front of people because he'll get emotional. Whatever the case may be, saying this is like you got to know how to talk to each individual to maximize each individual's potential, right? So like all those things that people don't know unless you talk to me, you don't know those things about me, right? And again, a 23-year-old, I don't know if he can do that. He might, but he hasn't led a locker room full of grown men that have kids that, again, the Andrew Whitworths, the guys that have, experience, have been there, done that, those guys don't have that. And I have some of that from all these leaks.
Love it. That's well said, man. I appreciate it. I got the utmost respect for your journey and rooting for you, man. And it's cool to see, and I appreciate you taking the time. Hey, if you watched this far, I appreciate it. Hit that like button down below. Send this video to someone you think would like it, and subscribe to the channel. I'm coming out with football content every single day. I go live on YouTube Tuesdays and Thursdays at noon Pacific for 1 hour, so come hang. See ya.